Welcome to Advaita, and in this video we will talk about reality. We will go deep into understanding what reality actually is and what it is not. Make sure to watch this video till the end to get some clarity on what consciousness actually is and what is the nature of this reality. So now before we go ahead and talk about reality, let's define reality, because it is important to define something before we discuss it. So if we assume the definition of reality as that which does not change and that which is permanent, then everything that changes and everything that is temporary is by definition not reality. So this is what many great Advaitic teachers like Adi Shankaracharya was talking about. Many of the Hindus might have heard of the term called Maya, which some teachers and philosophers interpret as an illusion. And the great Indian teacher Adi Shankaracharya said that this world is an illusion, it is Maya. Just like how we might confuse a rope to be a snake, this entire world is an illusion in the human mind. Now most of us cannot understand this, most of us cannot accept this as truth because we feel that this is real. We feel that this existence is actually true, right? Because we feel emotion, we see these objects to be true and real, and also we interact and experience this world. So we do not feel that this is an illusion. But what I have understood from those teachings is the way they define reality is very different. So when we talk in terms of the definition that we established earlier, which is what is absolutely real, is permanent, is eternal, is unchanging. If that is the definition of reality, then by definition, everything else which changes, which is temporary, which is not permanent, and which is not eternal, becomes an illusion or becomes unreal. So this is how we can look at Advaitic teachings. So now with this definition, let us look at everything around us. First of all, let us look at this world. This world constantly keeps changing. The climate keeps changing, the environment keeps changing, the economy keeps changing, people around us keep changing, even how the world looks keeps changing. So obviously this cannot be real. Then let us look at ourselves. Our body keeps changing. The way we look changes, the clothes that we wear changes. So all of these things keep changing. All that is physical keeps changing. So this again cannot be the ultimate reality. Now let's look at our minds. Our mind is also constantly changing. The way you feel today might be different from the way you felt yesterday or a year before. The way you think will be totally different from today to few years from now. So even our mind keeps changing, hence it is also not the ultimate reality. Now once we start removing things like this, our physical environment is not the ultimate reality, our body is not the ultimate reality, our minds are not the ultimate reality. As we peel out the layers like this, at some point we will come to something called as consciousness. Consciousness as a word, it cannot be defined. Of course, if you look at it in dictionary, it has a definition. But when we talk about consciousness in spirituality, it is undefinable and it is something that cannot be talked about. It is beyond any definition or any words. So once we remove our body and once we remove our mind, something called as the consciousness remains. Consciousness is that which is experiencing this world around us. Consciousness is that which experiences the mind itself. So that consciousness does not change. If you look at your own experience and your own life deeply, you will come to this conclusion. When you were a child, when you were a baby, of course your body was totally different. The way you looked was totally different. But the consciousness which was having those experiences is the same as the consciousness that is having this experience right now. And that consciousness will not change even when you get older. When you fight with someone, the same consciousness is witnessing that fight. When you are in love with someone, that same consciousness is experiencing that love. So though the anger and the love as an experience and an emotion are two totally different things, the underlying consciousness which is experiencing these different emotions and these different experiences is fundamentally unchanging. It is eternal and it is permanent. Hence, this consciousness is said to be the ultimate reality as per Advaita Vedanta. This is what Adi Shankaracharya was referring to in his very popular text Nirvana Shatakam, where he says Mano Buddhi Hankara Chittani Naham. He's telling here that I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the various aspects of my mind. I'm that eternal, unchanging consciousness in which all of these things appear. Now it is important to understand this because that consciousness is what we truly are, and it is eternal and it is blissful and it is unchanging and it never dies. So once we recognize and realize that we are that unchanging consciousness, all of our fears and all of our desires and all of our worries and suffering ceases to exist, because suffering and desires and fear, all of this appear in mind. They are limited to the level of the mind. They do not affect consciousness. So since most of us are so much entangled with the mind, we go through something called as suffering. Once we disentangle ourselves from the mind and recognize our true nature, which is consciousness, suffering ceases to exist. This is why we need to walk the spiritual path. This is why we need to have intellectual realization and ultimately someday the ultimate liberation. And this is why we need to read books. This is why we need to listen to enlightening content, because ultimately all these things take us there and make us realize who we truly are. Now, another important work of Adi Shankaracharya is called as Aparoksha Anubhuti. In this, he talks about how we can understand what consciousness and what our true existence is. Now, of course, this is a big topic and we will someday make a complete video on this text alone, which is Aparoksha Anubhuti. But just to give a small glimpse of what Shankaracharya is talking about in this text. In this text, he basically tells us that there is 3 types of understanding. One is through direct perception, second is through inference, and the third type of understanding is neither from direct perception nor through inference. Now, if you look at everything around us, we basically understand things either through direct perception. The second type of understanding is inference. Now, you look at a microscope and you see small unicellular organisms. Here, you are not directly seeing them. You are taking the help of a microscope. So, basically, you are analyzing the data that an instrument has given to you. This is said to be inference. Whether you look at a telescope or a microscope or various instruments to understand different concepts, you are basically understanding by inference. Most of modern science is just this. It is inference. Now, Shankaracharya tells us that there is some reality that you can neither understand by direct perception nor by inference. And that reality is the ultimate reality. And that reality is consciousness. Consciousness can never be understood through direct perception or inference because it is not something that is outside, which can be understood by inference or perception. It is something in which all other experiences happen. It is something which is actually that which is looking for. So basically, we cannot perceive consciousness from outside because it is the very subject which is inside. This consciousness is called as Brahman in Advaita Vedanta and various Upanishads. And this consciousness or Brahman is the God. And this consciousness is the ultimate reality, is the absolute reality. And when compared to that, all other experiences and all this physical world is an illusion because it keeps changing, it is not permanent and it is not fundamental. So basically, how I have understood this is consciousness is absolute reality. It doesn't need anything else to have its existence. Whereas all other experiences and all this physical reality needs consciousness for its existence. Because they derive their existence through consciousness. And hence Shankaracharya and other Advaitic teachers call this physical reality as an illusion. I hope this video was valuable to you and I hope you understood what reality is and what reality is not according to Vedanta and according to various Advaitic teachers. And if you find content like this valuable, make sure to subscribe to Advaita. We will be covering a lot of ancient Upanishads and Advaitic texts, and we will go deep into, understanding the nature of existence in this channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.